There's a lot of people that say that an intro is the most important part of anything, that you should always put the most effort into that in order to grab your audience and keep their attention. Generally that's true, but I'm lazy, so here's Rotten Ruin.
This is the introduction song. It's not very good, but it's not too long.
This is a book that, when you first hear about it, might sound super generic and boring. Like, it's a young adult novel, so obviously that carries its own stigma. There's a lot of tropes and cliches that are very easy to make fun of and that sort of thing. And it's post-apocalyptic, same story, and has zombies in it. So if you're anything like me, you've been completely inundated with just assloads of zombie shows and movies and video games just over the past 10 years. Not that they only appeared 10 years ago, but that they've just blown up like crazy in that time frame. So let's just get started on why that's not the case for this one. Now, this book is about a kid named Benny Imura. Now, he lives about 14 years after the zombie apocalypse has already happened. Now, that already sort of sets it apart from most other zombie fiction, I think, because think about it, most of it happens like either right as it's happening, or as the apocalypse is happening, or right after the apocalypse happens. You know, there's not many that take place years later after the threat is not gone, but everyone knows about it and knows how to combat it, and they have their own safe little settlements, and they're just going about their daily life. And so the book starts off with Benny Imura being, he's about to turn 15, or he just turned 15, and he needs to get a job, because in their town where you live, you get a certain number of rations up until you're 15, and then if you don't have a job, those get cut in half. So he needs to find something to do. And he looks around for a while, and he just, all the jobs that there are, he just hates. And he has the opportunity to work with his older brother, who is his only family in this, who is a bounty hunter. He goes outside the walls and hunts down zombies. And while that sounds cool as shit to most people, Benny really hates his brother because he feels that his brother let their parents die on the first night when the zombies first appeared. And that is one thing that bothered me about this book, is that Benny is supposedly only a year and a half old, but he can very clearly remember the memory of his mother dying. That's weird, but whatever, it's a zombie book, let's not question the science behind it too much. And eventually Benny obviously relents, and he has to join his brother Tom as a bounty hunter. They go out into the ruins, they discover all kinds of neat stuff. Benny starts hearing about this place called Game Land, which is supposedly zombie pits where they throw in kids and people with no weapons or anything just to see if they survive and gamble on it. And I'm not going to go too much more into that because of spoilers. See, the world building in this is actually quite good. Because, like I said, it's different. It takes place years later instead of right as it's happening. And also, it's just neat to see how people have adapted to living with zombies, you know? Most of the book takes place in and around a town called Mountainside, which is, you know, just a giant fenced-in area with about 8,000 people living in it. And it's weird to see all the different jobs and stuff, like odd, unique jobs that we don't have today that people there have. Like, there's a job where people just dispose of dead bodies, dead zombie bodies. You know, there's just a big gorge that they throw them in and burn them. And then there's another job where they work at a factory bottling cadaverine, which is a chemical that dead bodies make when they decompose. And people just use that cadaverine, smear it on themselves when they go outside the fence so that zombies will not smell them as easily. And even though we don't see any other towns or settlements in that, we also see about, or hear about these guys called way station monks, which go around just traveling, and they help people out, they do charity work, and they seem to believe that zombies are the, quote, meek that will inherit the earth, like in the Bible, and that's, you know, that's kind of neat to think about. So, world building in this very, very strong, obviously. I actually really liked Benny in this story as well. You know, he acted like a teenager. You know, like a lot of these young adult books, they'll either not act like a teenager, they'll act like total adults, which sometimes makes sense, but a lot of times it just doesn't. And Benny and his friends, yeah, they act like teenagers, they act like friends. You know, they swear, they disrespect authority, they don't have, like, super grandiose dreams for the most part. Well, but, you know, they're just trying to get by. And also, Benny and his friend are, you know, lazy. That a lot of teenagers are straight up lazy, I'll admit that. And that gives it some realism. And at first, Benny did seem pretty whiny, honestly. I'll give it that. Like, the first, like, 100 pages of the book, he's just whining about, wah, I hate Tom, wah, he let my mom die, wah. You know, it's not too bad, honestly, but, like, it did bother me a little bit. But then he goes out into the real world, starts fighting zombies and stuff, and then he grows up a little bit, and he realizes that his brother is just doing his best. So, Benny, overall, pretty good character. I liked him. He had good development overall. And, most of the other characters are good as well. With the exception of the villain, I'll get to him in a minute. But, you know, Tom has pretty good development. He's a badass and he's cool, but, you know, he's also basically just a mentor character. You know, he trains the main character, helps him out. Yeah, that's about it, honestly. With one exception. There's something in this book which is just phenomenally stupid. Like, just ridiculously, stupidly stupid. I hate it so much. It's, So, Tom is a bounty hunter. He kills zombies, and he also does this thing called closure, where people who have family members who have turned into zombies, he'll go out and find them, and he'll kill them, and then he'll give them a proper burial and all that. And a lot of times their loved ones will also have a letter or something that he'll read out for them, and, you know, just properly respect them. And that kind of makes sense. But Tom also seems to have it in his head that zombies should be respected or something. Like, the metaphor he uses is that, imagine if someone started peeing on a corpse of your loved one, would you be upset? Well, yeah. And so he doesn't kill zombies unless he absolutely has to, or if he's doing closure for it. That's really dumb. Okay, not only are zombies just straight up not people anymore, but they're a threat. You know, they go around, they bite people, and they kill them. They're, like, if you let a zombie go and it goes off and kills somebody, then you're responsible for everybody that it kills after that. That's just retarded. I really can't fucking get my mind around that, but whatever. It doesn't take up too much of the book, and they do make it clear that if their lives are in danger, then they're still going to lop heads off and stuff. So, whatever. I got over it pretty easily. And then, most of the side characters are also really good. Like, Jonathan Maybury has this weird way of writing side characters, which I've only ever really seen Stephen King do, where he'll just introduce a character and he'll spend about 2 or 3 paragraphs, just describing their appearance and their backstory and their personality. And even though it's kind of telling rather than showing, he somehow makes it really interesting. Like, there's a character who was a high school theater teacher before the zombies came, and then they just explain in a couple of paragraphs how he had a bunch of kids with him, and they held out in their school for several weeks, and then they realized help wasn't coming, so they ran off, and they were one of the founding groups of Mountainside. And it also says he's haunted by the kids that he didn't save. Now, that sounds really dumb and telling rather than showing, but somehow he makes it work. And even though that character is only on for a couple of pages, he's pretty interesting. Now, villain, he's not good. I'm not going to spoil who it is. No spoilers in my reviews, but he's just he just wants money. He's evil for shits and giggles. He wants money. He does evil shit because why not? He's kind of intimidating, I guess, so in that regard, he's not half bad, but honestly, nah, he's not a good villain. Story-wise, I can't give away much. I sort of gave a little synopsis earlier, but it's very fast-paced, you know, like, there's very, very few times in the book where it feels like there's nothing happening, you know. There's always something going on in this, and you can burn through it like crazy. I mean, the first time I read this book was a couple of years ago, and I think it took me like 4 or 5 days to read it, and this time, even though it was the second time I was reading it, I read it all in 2 days. Another thing, the prose, very, very good for a young adult novel. I mean, when action is happening, you're right in there, and you can always tell what's happening. It's never confusing, and I disagree with people like Brandon Sanderson who say that action in books should just be sort of glossed over. I disagree. I think it should be put in detail, and it should make your blood pump, and just be exciting, basically. Same way as in a movie or video game or anything like that. And yeah, the prose is very descriptive. Like, despite what I said earlier with the characters, most of the time it shows, it doesn't tell. There's several creative scenes where they're just fighting zombies or other humans, even. And the environment, you always get a feel for the environment that they're in. You can really get an idea for how the characters look. And there's actually several illustrations of a couple of the characters in this, but even without that, you could very easily get what they look like. The ending is also very good as well. Like, I won't say what it is, obviously, but it wraps up the story, mostly, but also still leaves it open for a sequel. So, you know, if you want a series to read, then there's that. And if you just want to read one standalone book, you could pretty easily do that as well. There'd be a couple unanswered questions, but you could work with it. And, I think that's about all I have to say, really. Like, I'd recommend this book to people that like young adult fiction that isn't too cliched, and the tropes and cliches it does very well. If you like action stuff, then this is good as well. If you really love zombies, that's good as well. And the only people who I'd say just really stay away from it, people who despise young adult fiction with every fiber of their being, or people who are just really, really tired of all the zombie stuff that's been coming out lately. And honestly, I wouldn't blame you if that's the case. That was my review. If you liked it, say you liked it. If you didn't like it, tell me I'm a stupid piece of shit, and I'll still appreciate it. And if you want to watch more, just subscribe.